theories of democracy. So, as we all know, democracy is one of the most confusing terms. It has a variety of meaning and is used in a variety of ways. Some describe it as a process of selecting government, while some see it as a form of government, and there are few who treat it as a social value or an ethical principle. Since there are different meanings assigned to the term democracy, there are various theories which have been associated with the term democracy. These theories can be of different types, such as liberal theory, the elitist theory, the pluralist theory, the Marxist theory, etc. Today we will be beginning with the discussion of these theories in this lecture. Firstly, we start with liberal democracy or the liberal theory of democracy. Since we all know it consists of two terms and therefore it combines both the liberal and democratic elements, it can be seen that the adjective liberal defines the noun democracy. The liberal elements within liberal democracy are based on the concept of liberalism, which is further based on individual liberty. This liberalism advocates for a restriction or a limited state intervention and a limited authority of the state. The authority of the state and liberty cannot go hand in hand. Therefore, the liberal elements of liberal democracy can be seen as individual liberty, natural and inherent rights are prime. This means that there should be a charter of rights, a charter of liberties within the state, and it should be justiciable. Such can be seen in the American Bill of Rights and in India the fundamental rights of the Indian Constitution. The second element of liberal democracy is a limited government is important. Since in liberalism the government is seen as a necessary evil, therefore through constitution there is a approach made to limit this government. Since constitution is a main part of a democracy and it is necessary for the putting restrictions upon the functioning of the government through its provisions of separation of powers, checks and balances, and fundamental rights. Also, an independent judiciary is necessary to enforce this constitution and limit the working of the government. This liberal concept of democracy was advocated by Locke, Smith, Ricardo, Spencer, Hayek, Berlin, and Robert Nozick. Now we come to the democratic elements within the liberal democracy. These are the supremacy of people's power. Like in the Indian Constitution, we begin with the preamble with the words that we the people of India. So we can see that the sovereignty and supremacy lies with the people of India. The second element is participation of people and their consent. It is very necessary in a democracy that the people should participate in the decision making process or policy making process of the government, and the government should be legitimate based upon the consent of the individual. Consent forms the basis of the legitimacy of the government. The third is electoral practice based on universal adult franchise. This ensures that all the people are given an opportunity to participate in the elections. The fourth element is popular, periodic, open, and multi party elections, which are the source of governmental power and legitimacy. These liberal features and democratic elements together form the liberal democracy. The liberal features give basic liberties of speech, discussion, assembly, which are required for democratic practices. These, along with the constitutional elements of rule of law, separation of powers, individual independent judiciary, and fundamental rights, are required for liberal democracy. Therefore, it can be said that liberal democracy in Western sense combines the features of liberalism, democracy, and constitutionalism. The different features or characteristics of the liberal democracy are: it is a popular government based on supremacy of people, which means that the government is elected by the people and it derives its authority and power from the people. So, like the social contractualists Locke and Rousseau, placed the supremacy in the hands of the people and thus made the government responsible and accountable to the people. The second feature is of consent and representation. The social contract gives acceptance to government based on consent. In this, the principle of consent means that the individual obeys that authority to which he has personally consented. Therefore, consent gives political legitimacy to the government. Therefore, in a liberal democracy, consent of the people on which the government is going to rule is important. Also, since there is a representative form of democracy in which the people rule indirectly through their representatives, therefore, the representatives must carry the trust and consent of the people to rule them. Without the consent given by the individuals to whom they are representing, the rule of the representatives can't be said to be legitimate. The third element is of limited and constitutional government. Limitations on the government are ensured through the popular sovereignty, and the governments are held accountable and are limited through the constitutional devices of checks and balances. Also, the government has a limited mandate and a specified time to rule, which gives limitations upon the government. The fourth principle is of majority. This principle comes in when the interest of of an individual is to be represented along with the interest of all the individuals. This gives place to the concept of. Now, there are some contemporary theories of democracy which focus upon the nature of the democracy, that is, how the democracy functions in different sociological environments. Now, one of these theories is the elitist theory. This was developed in the field of sociology. It is based upon the power distribution within the society. This theory believes that every society consists of two categories of men. The first are the elites or the minority within a social group, for example, society, state, religious institution, or a political party, which are organized and are capable of ruling. This elite exercises an influence or power within that social group. The second group is of the masses or the majority, which are unintelligent and apathetic. They are governed by the elite. So, this theory believes that democracy is a rule of elite minority, not of the people. The only rule can be by the elite, not by the people. The first person who talked about these different two classes of elites and the masses was Wilfredo Pareto in his The Mind and the Society book, in which he said that there were two groups within a society, which were the elites who were the superior and the masses which were the inferior groups. But the idea of a division of such a division of society was given by Mosca and Robert Mitchells. They believed that the people can be divided into two groups, the rulers and the ruled. The rulers have most of the wealth, power, and prestige, and they exercise all power in any form of government. And the ruled are not competent enough to replace the rulers. Now, Robert Mitchells, on the other hand, also gave the iron law of oligarchy, which believes that every organization is reduced to an oligarchy, that means is ruled by a chosen few due to their manipulative skills. He believes that within a democracy, the democracy functions upon political parties. But these political parties themselves are undemocratically organized organizations which represent the character of oligarchy. He says that democracy, due to vast and complex society structure, relies on political parties, and these political parties are structured organizations and have hierarchy, division of labor, and different decision making bodies. Since it is a structured organization, therefore the decision making comes in the hands of a single few which rule and control. These are those small elites which start ruling in a democracy. Therefore, all of the organizations degenerate into an elite rule. This is the iron law of oligarchy of Mitchell's. So he believed that even in a liberal democracy, there is no rule of the masses, but it is the rule of the elites. Now, this concept of elitist theory was developed by different writers such as Joseph Schumpeter, Sartori, Robert Dahl, C. Wright Mills, Carl Menahem, etc. We can divide the group of these elitist theorists into two. The early theorists, such as Michels, Pareto, Mosca, believed in the rotation of elites and the iron law of oligarchy. Their theory can be called the elitist theory. They believed that within a society there is a division of two groups, the elites and the masses, and these elites have only the power to rule, and there is no power given to the masses. But on the other hand, the other group believes that the element of democracy can still be saved within the elitist form of democracy through elections where people get a chance to express themselves. And since there is also competition between the elites, therefore it gives chance for to the people to remove the incompetent elites and to select the competent ones. The other group, which believes in the competition of elites as well as believes in the democratic element within the elitist theory, is the group of writers such as Joseph Schumpeter, Carl Menahem, etc. According to Carl Menahem, he believed in his book Ideology and Utopia, which he wrote in 1929, that the society, even if it has entrusted the power of shaping its policies into the hands of the elites, still remains democratic. This is done since the masses have the right to remove the elites through elections. It is also believed that all people cannot participate in the government directly. They can make their choices felt through different elections and by choosing different elites. He says that the democratic element within the elitist theory can be maintained through selection of elites based on merit and by curbing the distance between the elites and the masses, so that both the elite and the masses are remain compatible. Now we come to Joseph A. Schumpeter, who differs from the traditional theory of democracy in two ways. In his book Capitalism, Socialism and Democracy, which he wrote in 1942, he says that people do not have any right to govern in a modern society, and the forms of government should be based on the method of appointing and dismissing the lawmakers. The people only have the right to produce the government. They do not have any right to govern. Therefore, democracy is a means of authorizing governments. It is not a means to express the will of the people or to develop their capabilities. He believes that masses do not shape or influence the policies, rather, the politicians shape their wills. The masses are the consumers and the politicians are the entrepreneurs. Therefore, his theory is also called the economic theory of democracy. So we can say the later group of elitist theories turned the elitist theory of democracy into an economic theory in which they believed that the elitists are like entrepreneurs who sell their goods or the policies and woo the voters through their different methods and ways, and the voters are given only a passive role in which they select or elect their representatives from different competing elites.